I'm going to run through this here, and then we're going to dig into more detail for each one of these. Obviously, the first one is to turn it on. It's common sense, but it is important. I would say that coupled in this, like turning it on business, is to have enough power to be recording audio all day. So again, if you're using your smartphone, then just have a USB battery for backup, or have your charger, maybe both. Yeah. Then we got to set the file type, the file format, sample rate, and bit depth for your recording. Then set your sensitivity or gain, and then obviously press the record button. And then you have to monitor your audio levels to prevent clipping. Yeah, so most of the time, especially with our smartphones, most of these steps are automatic and they happen really quickly. But I do want us to feel comfortable recording and controlling our audio recorders or audio recording apps. So let's take a look. Yeah, turn it on. Like I said, that's kind of obvious. That's maybe one thing that I'm not hugely thrilled about my Tascam unit, is that the power switch is pretty hard to manipulate, which is on purpose. They don't want you like accidentally turning it off. But I would say they went like a little far with it. File type, file format, and sample rate and bit depth. So a lot of these are like lumped together, a lot of these settings. Real quick, file type. The most common is stereo. That's how like you listen to music. Stereo just means that you have two channels, a left and a right, and it's combined into one audio file. So on your computer, it's like one audio file, and if you drag it into your editor, it's going to have left and right signal in that one audio file. Another very common file type is mono. Mono is just one channel. So where stereo has two channels, mono just has one channel. And sometimes these are called ISO tracks, isolated tracks. So my Tascam unit has the ability to record 6 inputs at once. If I select mono and hit record, that results in six files getting recorded to the SD card. Each of those inputs isolated onto its own file. Another common thing is Polywave, or like something similar, where it's the same. It's like those 6 mono tracks, or however many tracks you've turned on, but in one file. So instead of 6 isolated files or separate files with each track on its own file, Polywave, or whatever the company wants to call it, is just one file with 6 isolated tracks in it, so that when you drop it into your editor, each of those tracks is controllable uniquely and distinctly from all the other tracks within that one file, but it is represented as like one asset in your timeline. But then you got to pick the file format. Most audio recorders and apps can record in a few different audio file formats, and these formats differ in quality, compression, file size. I want you to be able to get the highest possible quality out of your recordings. So if your audio recorder or your app doesn't have these settings, get in touch with me and we'll figure out the best possible quality for the device that you have. List of popular formats. There's WAV, W-A-V. WAV format, it's uncompressed. It's a very high quality, very common format. This is like all over the industry. It's a very, very old format, but it gets the job done. It's very widely accepted. Broadcast WAV format is a WAV format file, but with a little bit of extra metadata attached to it. We see this a lot, M4A or AAC. This is a good quality, but it is compressed format. That means that it's getting pushed through an algorithm, and the audio waveform is getting changed to try to be more efficient as far as keeping as much as possible of like what you hear, and then compressing the data so that the format takes up less space. So honestly, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference if I heard, the same clip in these two different, like between a WAV or an M4A, especially if it was a high quality M4A. But the issue with using a compressed format is if you ever need to edit it, there's not as much data there, and the file is not as malleable in the editing process. And so artifacts are going to start showing up more quickly, more readily. MP3, that's like hopefully you know what MP3 is. It's an old compressed format. It's absolutely not a viable quality for filmmaking. In a pinch, you can use an MP3, but if you are recording audio for somebody and then you give them MP3s instead of waves, they'll be disappointed and you probably won't get a call back. You can see that in this configuration, my Tascam recorder only offers wave and broadcast wave. And then you also see that the next setting we want to access the bit depth is bundled in that format setting. So I have to the Tascam presents them together. Okay, now we're going to get into how the audio recorder converts a physical analog signal like sound into digital ones and zeros, right? And the first part of that is sample rate. Sample rate is how many times a second the audio recorder checks or records a digital sample from the organic world, right? And so it's listening in these little slices. And the more slices you have per second, it's going to deliver a higher representation of the analog signal. And they measure that in hertz. In audio CD quality, the sample rate is 44,000 hertz. And so 44,100 times a second, it's checking what is the sound now? What is the sound now? What is the sound now? And then DVD quality steps it up a little bit to 48,000 times a second, and Blu-ray quality steps it up even more to 96,000 times a second. And you can see that my Tascam can go up as high as 192,000 times a second. Anyways, so obviously CD quality is, you would think that's good enough, or DVD quality is good enough. Basically, if you can record in higher sample rates, it's all about getting the cleanest possible signal so that as you drop it into the editor and you start working with it, you apply filters or whatever you need to do, it's gonna be, the more data you have to work with, the better the final outcome is gonna be. Low to mid-tier industry standard is delivering audio at 48 kilohertz. Bit depth. Bit depth is very different than something called bit rate. We'll talk about that in a second. Bit depth works hand in hand with sample rate. And so sample rate is how many times a second is the audio device recording a sample from the real world. And then bit depth is how many variables does each sample have to play with to assign that point of data. Right, so CD quality is recorded at a sample rate of 44,100 times a second at a bit depth of 16. That means at 44,100 times a second, the recorder is choosing from 65,000 variables to describe the audio that's being recorded. Most mid-level film production audio is delivered in 24-bit. So that math works out to 16,700,000 assignable variables to describe the audio. So mid-tier audio gets recorded at a sample rate of 48,000 times a second and at a bit depth of 16 million assignable variables. It's pretty wild to wrap your head around. There's audio recorders on the market that record at 32-bit. So the math on that, 4 billion variables to describe the sound. The next thing we have to do is set our gain or sensitivity. So if you use the built-in audio recording app on your phone, it does this automatically and it adjusts automatically. So if I'm trying to record a quiet thing, it's going to ramp up its sensitivity to try to hear that and try to make that quiet signal louder. If I'm recording a loud thing, a rock concert, then it's automatically going to ramp the sensitivity down to make those really loud sounds more average loudness. The problem with leaving sensitivity on automatic is that it's constantly ramping up and down in response to what's going on. And so even just with me talking right now, if I had the gain on automatic, whenever I stop to think or take a breath, during that time, the gain is going to ramp up and all the background ambient sound or even just the hiss of the device itself is going to get louder. And then when I start talking, it's going to ramp down again to keep my voice as an average loudness. And then that ambient sound or hiss of the recorder is going to get quieter again. And so you'll constantly hear this kind of pumping, ramping sound. And so if we can set our gain manually and leave it in one spot, then it's going to record a much more consistent and natural sound. Now, when setting it, we want to record the highest signal to noise ratio possible. And by signal to noise, what do I mean? So if I'm recording my voice, I want to reject all the echoes off the walls in the room that I'm recording in. If I'm outside, I want to record my voice louder than the wind or the cars driving by or people walking by that are chatting or something. We want the signal, the thing we're trying to record, to be as loud as possible in relation to any other sound that might exist in the space that we don't actually want to record. So most of that is going to come from microphone proximity, getting the microphone as close as possible to the sound source. And so you'll see, like on social media all the time, people have, like, they're recording with their phones and they're just holding their phone next to their mouth, or they'll have wasn't ready with my props. You see influencers have these like little influencers, content creators, whatever, will have these like little audio recorders. These are from Rode, and they'll just like have them fully exposed. It's almost like a status thing. Like, not with a floppy collar. They don't. They'll do that. I've seen like lots of folks like have it on their hat or whatever, right? So get it as close as you can. Oh my god, get it as close as you can to the sound source. But in the narrative filmmaking world, we don't really want to see the microphone unless it's part of the concept. Like you're doing a documentary and you don't mind, it's like a reality TV program, something like that. Usually we want to kind of hide the microphone, get it out of the frame. So you're always writing this line between how close can I get it but without getting it into frame, or hiding it in frame is also viable. Another reason we want the loudest possible audio signal is that we don't have to boost the signal in post. So if we record some audio, even if it's recorded really cleanly, but it's a very quiet signal, in the editor, we're gonna have to make it louder. And that just means that you're doing a digital process that is actually unnecessary to have done. Like if you record it properly, when you record it, then you're not gonna have to make it louder in post. A lot of recorders will give us the ability to increase or decrease the sensitivity or gain of the recorder. I've got tutorials on that in the tutorial module. Lastly, don't forget to hit that record button. I know that seems silly, but you've gone through all these other steps, you've got everything set up, and you're probably excited to, see your vision come to life, and you might just kind of forget that last step, and that would be really heartbreaking. If you're working as part of a crew, then the director is going to call for sound to start rolling. I like to give strong affirmative feedback to that person so that they know for sure that I know for sure that I'm recording. In the old days, when you recorded to tape, it took a couple of spins of the tape reels to get up to speed. And so the audio recorder would say speeding. That means, yeah, I'm recording, I'm up to speed, we're good to go. So that's carried over. Some folks will still answer the director with speeding, or you can just say rolling. I like to wait a second or two, like watch the numbers count up so I know for sure, yes, the device is recording. Like I look for the record light, and I like wait for like 1, 2, and then I'll shout speeding to the director. Okay, so to recap, here are my recommended settings. File type, stereo, mono, depending on what situation you're in. File format, WAV or lossless. Sample rate, 48,000 is good for us. If you want to experiment with higher rates, see what your device can do, that's fine. Bit depth, 24-bit is good for us. And then finally, bit rate is really different than bit depth. Bit depth is how many variables the audio recorder has available to it to decide how to describe the sound it's recording. Bit rate is how much data per second a compressed format is utilizing, like MP3 or MP4, AAC. The higher bit rate is going to result in a higher quality sound, but ultimately it's still a compressed format. I would highly recommend that you not use those formats. All right, I know that was a ton of information. Please let me know if you have any questions about your gear, any questions about this material I just presented, and I'm happy to help you out.